I think IHL is very clear about that. There is a duty to treat, there is a duty to treat without discrimination, and a doctor that will discriminate will be a war criminal. And over the years, I was really training my, the MSF team in the field by saying, either you do that or you are a war criminal, and doctors can be war criminals. And in our negotiation also with, the parties to the conflict, both the state but mainly the non-state, we were also strong explaining, but if we don't do that, we become war criminals. So I think the law is very good when you use in terms of responsibility, explaining to the other, you have your duties, I have mine. So how do we, reconcile that? So IHL is very clear about that. And IHL go as far as saying that no one shall be punished for having carried out medical activities compatible with medical ethics, whatever the circumstances and the person benefiting. So this is plain IHL. So I would say, and I've been training the MSF people for years by saying we have an immunity clauses, an exemption clauses. So whatever domestic law say, we have this IHL. But then when you go to domestic law, you discover that they just forgotten to include that because they've included IHL in military code, which are not criminal code. But when you go to the civilian criminal code, you don't find this provision. This is why MSF, since 4 years, we are asking for this exemption to be included in counterterrorism law. We've been up to the Counterterrorism Committee of the UN Security Council to ask for that 4 years ago. They say thank you, but I am reviewing all the new regulation on counterterrorism, including the new European one. None of them include this. It's not even a humanitarian exemption, it's a medical exemption. I started with that. When I started to ask that, others would say, no, but you cannot take the doctors aside. We need to have a global humanitarian exemption. I said, let's try with what is already within international convention. We have not succeeded, not yet. And all states, if you take the European one, they would say, no, but trust the judge. They will not confuse an MSF doctor and a criminal. Trust the judge. Yeah, but the judge comes very often too late, if I can say so. And in Nigeria, for instance, that we have been under investigation by the military for, having a relationship, treating people in the opposing side. I've checked the law. It is just copy and paste of the UK law. So, and they told me, but we have just, we have done our job properly. We've been said that we need to have good counterterrorism law. We've taken the good one. We've copied and pasted. And of course, in a country at war, you cannot really, rely on a judge to protect your team on the field while it is a conflict. And also, while I was explaining to you that if you cannot capture, you kill. So you never end in front of a tribunal. Your life is sometimes shorter. It's like when you sit, on the highway. If you have a road, and if you have an engine problem in a highway, your life expectation is very short. On the battlefield, I can tell you that as a relief worker, your life expectation is not very good. But if you're not considered as a relief worker, but as a support to criminals, your life expectation is even shorter. So this is serious. We want exemption to be implemented within domestic law. We will keep asking that for the coming years. That's it. Okay, so first, the 2 years was not the initial negotiation. It was negotiation to understand the mistakes and to ensure that we had the proper guarantee. Okay? So there was a number of dead people behind us, so we wanted to clarify that. It has not taken us 2 years before starting, when we start operation in Afghanistan, like in Nigeria, the negotiation process is quite quick. In most conflict, MSF work on both sides with negotiation with both sides. And to answer your your question, and then I will give some example. Usually it takes less, and it is because it was the American that it took so long. Because the American, they are very serious with law, so serious that it takes really long. Yeah, but the negotiation, wow, very brilliant. There's another country that gives a lot of attention to that with brilliant lawyers that really need to be also resisted because, wow, otherwise the situation, everything they do is legal unless you explain them that it's not, but you have to stand in front. Huh? But the way that, for some countries, they don't matter too much to be legal, but the US, they want to be legal sometimes, wow, to a point that is long. For others, and if I take the example of Afghanistan, our negotiation to resume after Kunduz with the Taliban and with the Afghan government were far quicker. So it's just to put some, relativity about what you're saying. Usually it's easier with non-state armed groups because they don't have that army of lawyers, and we agree on basic principle. Our MOUs usually it's 1 or 2 pages. The MOU it takes the full principle of the Article 3 common. I'm not very creative on that. I just copy and paste. And either they agree or disagree. If they don't agree, we cannot start. So, and if they agree, it's fine. So our negotiations are basic. They are based on operation, and they have an interest for us setting operation. And basically, we are giving medical care to victims. So unless they want those victims to die, there's not a big problem. So I would say this is the main element. And the most difficulty we have today is negotiating with states, not with non-state. While the state, they say, oh, but the non-state, they respect nothing. No, they don't respect nothing. What they don't respect is the sovereignty of the state. They fight it. This is clear. They don't respect the law because they fight against the state. Fine. But throughout the MSF experience, it has been easier to negotiate with non-state armed groups, and they are not the one breaching the basic humanitarian principle of our medical mission the most. Where we have problems, I'm not saying that they behave perfectly and they respect human rights, especially in situations where they have to detain, they loot, whatever. But when we agree on something, usually it is also because it is their interest to respect those basic humanitarian principles. And I think it's very important to remind people that respecting humanitarian law is in the interest of the people. If we do not manage through the negotiation to come to a common agreement that it is a common interest, we cannot enforce alone principle that people would disagree, especially people with weapons. So our duty is to convince them that it is a common interest. This is the most important. And this is why we should not be pessimistic or septic or depressive, thinking that we are the only one bringing and defending humanitarian values. No, we have to remain, on the right side of the fight. Our duty is to convince others that it is our common interest. And this requires some skill, some humility, maybe sometimes this is missing, but this is the most important. And I would just take the non-state armed group globally, and I will not comment on ISIS, because, of course, you always have exceptional situation. Okay. But on governmental side, it's more complex. Usually the MSF would negotiate mainly with the Ministry of Health on the governmental side. And we have the agreement because actually we are fulfilling a state duty, which is to provide health care to the population. So our negotiation used to be mainly with Ministry of Health, which was not very difficult. Now we have to go in some contexts, namely the counterterrorism context, we have to go to the Ministry of Interior, to the Ministry of Defense, to a whole range of regional special forces, whatever, and international support to explain that what we are doing is under IHL, and that those people are not only terrorists, but they are first party to the conflict. And this requires extensive discussion. And of course, it's not easy. It's not easy for them because targeting killing is not an official doctrine. The way those security forces are organized is also very often a little bit gray because special forces are not supposed to exist. So how do you discuss with people that are supposed to exist and not supposed to be there? So it starts for us to be as complex negotiating with the governmental side because we need to meet them in places where that's okay. So the kind of things that we were doing before with the non-state armed group, now we are going to do it with the official, non-official, to tell them we don't know that you are here, but you should know that we are here. You see? And we need to know that we can be there, relax, and that stuff. So it's not easy. And for me, and the example of Iraq was so striking. I mean, because states usually speak about the fragmentation of non-state armed group. This is so it's comfortable. First, they are people who do not respect anything, and they are fragmented, and they don't have responsible command. Of course, their responsible command is considered a criminal, so they don't show up. Huh? Okay, but in Iraq, the most fragmented side was the international and domestic side. At the national level, the number of forces, militias from the government were huge, and at the international level, my God, there was a number of people. Huh? So I would say, and Afghanistan was the same. We had the Taliban on the non-governmental side, but on the official governmental and international support, the number of people you need to check to ensure your security is incredible. And the main element that they don't want to discuss with you because they are not supposed to be there. So these are the real contemporary challenge.
Sadly, we're out of time. All that remains is to thank you, Dr. Françoise Richier-Saunier, for your time, for your insights, for everything. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure.